Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers podcast. My name is Eric. I've got hosting duties today, and I am joined by Corey Puffett and Evan Ash as always. How you fellas doing today?
I'm doing well.
Evan?
I'm doing well too.
Nice. We are recording on a Thursday this week for, I think Corey's got something going on tomorrow, and
I'll be at Toby's Dinner Theater to see Grease.
Excellent choice. I love me some Toby's.
Yeah.
Never seen Grease, but I've seen the movie Grease. I haven't seen.
I've never
production.
seen either, but
Okay.
it's my aunt's favorite movie, so
Oh, nice. Yeah. Are you aware of the?
I'm aware of the commercial that has John Travolta and the guys from Scrubs singing one of the I guess a T-Mobile version of one of the songs.
Okay.
That is literally
That's the
extent of my knowledge of Grease.
Okay, well, you're in for, I don't know if I'd call it a treat, but you're in for something. So,
I am in for something.
yeah, I mean, it's popular.
It's got a lot to live up to, considering the last show I got to see was Something Rotten, and that was excellent.
Okay, great. Well, we've got plenty of sports to talk about, so we'll vector towards that. We'll start with the NFL, and I'm going to be the biggest negative Nelly on earth to kick off the show and say the NFL schedule reveal is the dumbest thing that people care about ever. We already know who everybody was playing and where they were playing those games back in when the regular season ended. We knew the opponents. We knew that. Who cares what order they're in? We're going to forget in a month anyway. And guess what? We'll just look at the schedule week to week as it goes and be like, oh, yeah, the Chiefs are playing this team this week.
Well, when you're, drafting for fantasy football, you don't want to have a quarterback and two wide receivers and a running back all with weak games in the same. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
This is stupid. I agree.
They also give you the stuff on the fantasy draft. Like, it tells you whose bye week is when. Like, it's just. But there are some things that are relevant. Mainly the one thing is the opener.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that you get out of this.
First game of the season.
So the opener is going to be Chiefs versus Lions. The defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs will be hosting the Detroit Lions. Interesting choice. I think we all agree the Lions showed something last year. They showed some moxie. They finished over 500. They almost made the playoffs.
My
right?
team's going to start 0-1.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, my team started 0-1 when they had to play the Packers in Lambeau, and they ended up going 13-3, so it's fine. But they had so many good home opponents.
Oh, yeah.
It just
all of the good opponents that they're going to be playing, they get to play at home.
And I
the
know,
Bengals, they get to play at home. The Bills, they get to play at home. The Eagles, they get to play at home.
Yeah, and they obviously play the Chargers both places, and I don't know if the Chargers are actually that good. But, yeah, it's just kind of they had an opportunity, I think, to pick a little bit of a spicier matchup. The Bengals, AFC Championship, 2-time rematch, right? Like, the Chiefs got them last season. The Bengals got them the year before.
Yep. Bills-Chiefs has become a bit of a rivalry in recent years between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
They've played epic regular season games, epic postseason games. Mm-hmm. The Eagles would be a Super Bowl
the
rematch.
Postseason game that caused us to change the overtime rules for the playoffs.
Yeah, again.
Yeah. Again, yes.
So, like, I just felt like there were better choices, and I feel bad for the Lions that they got sacrificed like this because, again, Corey, they will probably start 0-1 because not only would it any time of the year you play the Chiefs in Arrowhead, you're going to have a hard time beating them because they're the Chiefs and they're at home. But the first game of the year just always seems to have vibes added to it. The crowd is extra juiced. The players are extra hyped.
Oh, they're revealing the banner.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much there, and even
They're booing unity.
Well, yes,
That did
booing
happen,
unity
yes.
happened in that stadium. That is true. But when you talk about like the Super Bowl hangover and how a lot of times the Super Bowl champion ends up having a bit of a down year the next year. I don't know that necessarily applies to the Chiefs to the same extent that it applies to other teams. And B, even if it does, you see Super Bowl winners come out pretty ready to go for the first game. Even if they start to kind of, the rest of the season, they maybe aren't quite as focused. That first game in front of their home fans with the banner reveal, usually they're ready to go.
I mean, if the Chiefs have a Super Bowl hangover, like what would you describe this past Rams season as? Like
that was a Super Bowl blackout.
Oh, okay, yeah, they were still blacked
they were
out 2
still
days
drunk.
later.
I mean, the thing though with the Rams though is their team just deteriorated. It wasn't so. It wasn't like the Eagles in 2017 going into the 2018 season where they were partying with the Capitals all summer.
Yes.
This is
Fans
more
of
like
the Stanley Cup.
like the Rams just kind of. It felt like they were a fortunate Super Bowl winner in the first place. Like they caught a lot of breaks that year. The Jaquaski Tart drop. I mean. Like the silliness, like the Super Bowl game was really close and could have easily gone the Bengals' way. They almost blew the Tampa game, right? And then they were a team that was made up of old veterans that they paid a lot of draft picks and a lot of money for, and they all got old at the same time, and they were cooked just like that overnight. So,
And then on top of that, Cooper Kupp gets hurt.
that did not help, but
No.
They
even
were cooked
before,
anyway.
even before that,
Yeah,
they sucked.
They were cooked before that.
Yeah,
but
like Cooper Kupp just wasn't there to make you feel better about getting your ass kicked. But they still got their ass kicked even when he was there.
Yeah, I do want to point out, going back to the schedule reveal, I agree with y'all that having ESPN 2-hour specials and whatnot and getting all worked up over it is utterly stupid, but it is a little hypocritical from us, considering that we've done 4 different 5-hour live NFL draft specials on this show, and they're just reading names.
the draft is infinitely more relevant than the schedule reveal.
The draft actually reveals something that we didn't know before.
If we had no idea who each team was playing, then this would make a sort of sense. But we do know who they're going to play. We know because there's a formula to it.
Yeah, so I think that the draft is much more relevant information.
I mean, it's more relevant, but it's not
significantly more relevant.
It is infinitely more
They're
relevant.
not playing football.
But the teams, we say all the time, great franchises build through the draft.
Yes.
Like it's the building blocks of your football team is the draft. So what happens on draft day is extremely relevant. Like there's a lot to talk about with how it affects teams and how it changes things and how certain teams might have whiffed on picks.
The building block to your record is your schedule.
Oh, jeez.
Who said that?
We already knew what the building blocks were. We just didn't see how they were stacked up, in what order. Who cares? But,
There is one other game that is kind of note for this schedule, though, because for the first time ever, the NFL will be playing on Black Friday. So the day after Thanksgiving, we get some Friday night action between the Dolphins and the Jets.
that game looks more interesting than it would have 4 years ago when both teams were the worst teams ever. So,
especially if Tua is healthy and playing this season, then that becomes a really interesting game.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Jets, though, Aaron Rodgers will debut with the Jets on Monday Night Football in Week 1.
Yeah, against the Bills.
Against the Bills, yes.
So that's
I
a
mean,
loss.
hopefully for the Jets, the last time they played on Thanksgiving, if I remember correctly, was a night that will live in infamy for Mark Sanchez and the butt fumble. So,
Well, maybe they'll have better luck on Black Friday then.
yeah.
So the other kind of interesting thing about all this is that apparently games this year do not belong to networks just based on whether they are AFC games, NFC games, anything like that. Networks. Oh, that guy's in Game of Thrones.
That's
Yeah.
Torment. Yes. Corey got distracted by the shiny thing on the TV.
Yeah,
with the Scott's Lawn commercials.
Anyway, networks are allowed to bid on games, and I don't fully understand how that works. I tried to look into that today, and even though it's been mentioned, like Adam Schefter tweeted about it in the lead up to the schedule reveal, but no additional information has been shared about specifics of how networks can bid on them. And are Sunday Night Football games all going to be on the same network, or can different networks bid to cover that? I have no idea how all that is going to work, but it's interesting.
It sounds unnecessarily confusing to the customer.
It does.
So
I mean, it's unnecessarily confusing to the customer, but
we have we all watch Red Zone.
we have all
so-
the channels
so
anyway.
We're good.
Yeah,
But
we're
it's going to make the NFL more money. They're growing the pie. The biggest pie in the whole world just got bigger.
Well, they're stepping on the package is more like I would describe it. They're taking more of the pie and mixing it in with a bunch of filth and saying that it's the same, and it's not. But that's just my take.
I suggested that the networks bid on games in one of our chats, or maybe in person with you guys, and y'all thought it was ridiculous.
I still think it's ridiculous.
I think this is a great idea because I feel like it's more likely that there are going to be more good games on TV. And now there's no requirement that every team gets a primetime game.
But some teams could also get multiple Thursday games, and they don't necessarily have to be back to back.
Yeah.
So, like the Ravens, who always seem to have Thursday night games before their bye week or against teams that are coming off of their bye week, they might have 3 different Thursday night games, and they could all be non-concurrent. So you could have 3 different short weeks during the season.
But the Thursday night games, what's really important is if you're on the road on a Thursday night, right? The road teams on Thursday nights get screwed.
There's nothing to say that a team couldn't play multiple Thursday night games on the road non-concurrently.
Concurrently? I mean, you can't play 2 games at the same time, so...
I guess I'm saying the wrong thing.
Not consecutively.
Not consecutively.
Not concurrently. A split squad.
Split squad
NFL,
football. Love it. You step on the package even more, baby. Let's just keep making stuff up and making the game worse so these guys can make
every
more money.
week.
Like I've become a complete hater on all of these unnecessarily cute things just to squeeze a few more dollars out of it. I think that ultimately, if you continue to push it like this, you're ultimately going to doom your product. But they haven't done that yet, so.
I mean, you feel like it's a bubble that's going to burst?
Yeah,
absolutely.
At some point? Of course. Everything is. Everything is a bubble in that case. The more you oversaturate and the less you focus on the quality and more about how much you can sell, eventually your product runs out of steam and can't keep up with that, and it blows up. It happens
Even
in
with
every
this
market.
sport in this country?
Yes, it happens with every market ever, and nobody ever sees it coming. So.
I enjoy a lot of the stuff that Disney Plus is putting out for Star Wars, but some of the things are not as good as others, and because they keep saturating the market with it, there's going to be more and more of those things that just don't really impress me.
I'm just saying, greed catches up. Yeah, and this
even in the NFL.
Yeah, it happens everywhere. You can't tell me that it won't happen here. I'm not saying it's going to happen soon, but
it also doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be permanent.
No,
but
you can change course.
Yeah,
make adjustments. Things happen.
I feel like the NFL is on the cutting edge in the sense that they're gonna do stuff to keep themselves relevant, unlike baseball has done, where they just like, oh well, we're the great American pastime. We don't have to change anything, and they took that for granted. I don't know that the NFL takes their popularity for granted. They want to, sort of step on the throat of the other networks and every other television show ever.
I agree with you.
Number one.
I agree with you on that aspect, but there are still moves that they have made that I believe have made the game worse, like Thursday Night Football's entire existence. Those games suck. Okay, and if you keep
maybe they won't suck.
They don't always suck because of the lack of quality. That was the case for a lot of years, but more recently there have been some pretty entertaining Thursday night matchups. The problem is that because it is a safety and health issue for the players, you are seeing more players getting hurt. And I know exactly why you're saying, oh God, Evan, because like the very existence of football is a safety concern for players.
Yes.
Like it's a high impact, violent sport where people are going to get hurt. I get that. But that doesn't mean that playing on Thursday night does not increase the frequency of those injuries and sometimes increase the severity of those injuries. And the more players get hurt, the lower the quality is of the games that are being played.
I agree with that. I think they should keep the Thursday games, but teams should get the previous Sunday off. Like, they should have, 10 days between their last game and their Thursday game?
So, always coming off of a bye week. But that's not possible when you're talking about like early season games, except for the very first one of the season. Like you're not going to have any week 1 buys, so you can't have a Thursday night game in week 2.
Yeah,
it's logistically not realistic to make
could
that.
figure out something.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's enough crapping on the NFL, which we talk about nonstop on the show during the season.
We love the NFL.
We love it, but I love to remind people that they can make mistakes. Okay, there are times where the NFL errs, and I will always point those out. This is so irrelevant that I can't even consider this a mistake. This is the schedule release. Like this is actually something I give them credit for. Like you turned an absolute nothing into something. So you got us to talk about it for 15 minutes. So let's move on to sports that are actually being played right now. Let's hop over to Major League Baseball. I think the NBA is kind of the highest of stakes right now, so we'll wrap up with that. Baltimore Orioles cooking, kind of. They went 3-3 in their last 6, but they played the 2 best teams in the league, the Atlanta Braves for 3 down in Atlanta. The Orioles won the opener of that series before losing by 1 run in the following 2 games, so that was their first series loss, I think, out of the last 8 series. So it's a first series loss in a little while. And then they came home, lost the opener against the Rays. That was their first opening game loss of a season for a series. And then they took the next 2, including last night where they won 2-1 to finish off a series win over the team with the best record in Major League Baseball. So, Evan, both of us have been watching this team. What do you think about the Orioles? We kind of talked about, this kind of being a bit of a gauntlet for them coming up after a pretty easy stretch. So far, I think they've acquitted themselves pretty well.
I completely agree, yeah. I think this team believes in itself. I think these last 6 games really proved to me that this Orioles team can hang with some of the elite teams in Major League Baseball. Like they didn't go down to Atlanta and get pounded, right? Like, how the Orioles used to go play the Yankees up in New York and lose by 14 and 15 runs on back-to-back nights. Like that didn't happen this past weekend. And then they took 2 out of 3 from Tampa Bay, who had only lost 6 games all year, and they lost 2 in a row. So I am impressed.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that. I mean, we've talked about this team and the roster construction and how we're waiting for them to kind of figure out who's going to be who, but team's winning games right now, and the vibes are good. They're playing well. You ultimately can't complain when you're 24-13.
Oh yeah. Correction. Tampa Bay was 28-7 entering this series, and now 29-9. So they'd only lost 7 games all year, and lost 2 in a row.
Well, there you go. So an update for where the Orioles are in their schedule now. They've got a 3-game home series against the Pirates, who have been surprisingly good, although they did get swept by the same Rays that the Orioles just took 2 out of 3.
The Pirates have turned surprisingly terrible now. They're 1-9 in their last 10.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
I did not realize that either.
I knew that I knew they hit a bit of a skid. I didn't realize it was that kind of a skid.
And yet they're still
They're
in first place in the
division.
NL Central.
What's their record, though?
21-17, same as the Yankees.
Okay, so, but they have turned into a pumpkin a little bit as of late. Like
Yes.
because they were tied with the Braves, I believe, for the best record in the National League.
They were ahead of the Braves for a while.
Yeah,
Yep.
so they're currently on a little bit of a slide. So the Orioles might be catching them at the right time, and then the Orioles will face the Angels at home for 4. And Shohei Ohtani will be pitching in Baltimore on Tuesday. And I know some of us plan to be there. All of us probably want to be there. But your boy and Evan are certainly going to be there, barring an act of God or Satan or whoever. So, that's my plan, is to go to that game on Tuesday. So that should be a good time.
Mm-hmm. It's also worth pointing out, for those who are 21 and over, that the Orioles on Saturday night home games open the gates 2 hours early, and domestic beers are $5.
That sounds like it could be trouble.
Yes.
In a good way. But, all right, Corey, I see you've got a substantial amount of notes here about your Yankees. So tell us what's going on with them.
So Aaron Hicks got his first extra base hit of the season on Sunday. I think he was one of 3 players who had more than I forget how many plate appearances was the minimum, but without an extra base hit at the time in all of Major League Baseball.
Ow.
Yeah.
That's tough. And then what happened?
And then he got injured.
That is more familiar for Aaron Hicks.
That is very familiar for Aaron Hicks. Of more interest, Anthony Volpe hit his first career grand slam the other day against the A's.
Did he celebrate it after the game in a loss and have a bunch of Yankee fans freak out on him?
No, because the Yankees won.
Of course they did. They're playing the A's.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
A's are like 6-24.
The A's are terrible.
They're like the worst team I've ever seen.
8-30.
They are 8-30.
Oh my god, that's brutal.
That is very brutal. He's the youngest Yankee to hit a grand slam in the Bronx. That includes both iterations of Yankee Stadium. He is the first Yankee rookie shortstop to hit a grand slam ever.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good for him.
And keep in mind that Derek Jeter was once a rookie shortstop for the Yankees. He did not hit a grand slam.
That's fine. Pretty sure Jeter was happy with his career.
I'm sure he was. Right-handed pitcher Davy Garcia, who last pitched in the majors 2 years ago and amassed an ERA over 5.2 across 8 career starts, has finally returned to the majors. He's in a bullpen role. He earned a 3-inning save against Oakland this week. He had 1 run on a dinger, but only 2 total hits, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts. So the Yankees definitely need some support in their bullpen, especially with Clay Holmes being absolutely horrible this season.
So I'm not familiar with this person's story. Why were they out for so long?
They were pitching in the minors. They were sent down to the minors after a couple of games in 2021 because he was just struggling.
Okay. So this wasn't like an injury thing.
No, as far
where
as
he
I
missed
know,
a
this
whole
was
bunch
not
of
an
time.
injury thing. It just, he was kind of relegated for the better part of 2 years.
Oh, glad he's getting an opportunity.
So the Yankees are coming off of a series sweep against the A's, which, as Eric mentioned, the A's suck. So it's not impressive.
The Orioles didn't sweep the A's.
Right.
They only took 3 out of 4. So
Yeah. So on its own, not impressive, but it is the Yankees' first series sweep of the season. That despite the fact that the Yankees do have a winning record. The Yankees are currently 5th place in the AL East, though, which is frustrating, especially given that we are 8 games back in the division, but we would be 1st place in the AL Central. We would share the lead in the NL Central. We'd be only a game and a half back of the lead in the AL West. We'd be 2 games back of the lead in the NL West, and 4.5 games back, but still in 2nd place in the NL East.
yeah, this goes to show you that the schedule balance thing, all that means is that the AL East is going to get an opportunity to beat everybody else's asses more frequently. So it's like, hey, we're winning more games, and it doesn't matter because we're all in the same spot.
Yep.
This is where, as much as I wasn't a fan of the wild card expansion, this is where it's actually nice, where it's like the AL East is decisively the best division in baseball, and we kind of knew it was going to be coming into the season.
I didn't think it would be this good.
Of course
I thought
not.
Boston was going to have a rougher time.
And yet at
than they
least
have.
one of these teams is going to be left out.
Yeah, and I think Boston will probably regress at a certain point because I just don't believe in them. The Orioles are, they're doing well right now, but I'm not 100% sold that they're going to continue to play it. Certainly not this clip.
As we mentioned last week, the Orioles have had a fairly easy opening to the season in terms of the series that they've played. They have some more, difficult matchups coming up, but you guys got through the Rays. What took 2 of 3?
But ultimately, it works in the Orioles' favor in the sense, or anybody's favor in the AL East, the fact that they get more opportunities to beat on these other teams that otherwise would have fattened their record against each other.
Yeah.
And so suddenly you get a team like the Rangers who ends up winning 85 games or something because they got to beat up on the A's 19 times instead of 13, and suddenly you're left out for an inferior team. Now it's like, no, we get to see you, and we don't have to play everybody in our division for almost half of our games. We get a few more opportunities to spread the love around and kick your asses.
Speaking
The
of which, the
Orioles are gonna
Rangers
get
somehow
to
are
play.
winning. They are number 1 in the NL West.
They're AL West, but they're playing well.
Or, AL.
I just
AL
picked
West.
them out of a hat. I'm not impugning the Rangers. I'm saying that they were an example of a team that's not in the AL East. That's probably not as good as anybody in the AL East.
No.
So
Yeah, I mean the Orioles going to get to play all 5 NL Central teams, and they're kind of mediocre at best.
What's
if
going
you
on
ask
with
me.
the Cardinals? They stink.
They're terrible. 13-25.
I think we all picked them to win the division,
Yes.
and they're trash.
They are really bad.
I don't know what's
Hot
going on.
garbage.
That's
3-7 in their last 10.
brutal.
So last thing on the Yankees, their upcoming schedule. So right now they are starting a 4-game set against the Rays. They had a 3-game set against the Rays last weekend. So the Orioles were just sandwiched in the middle. We took one of those 3. So definitely need to get at least 2 of these 4. But tonight it's Drew Rasmussen on the mound for the Rays. So I kind of need him to pitch well because he has not been pitching well for my fantasy team lately.
Is that game in
He's
New
the
York?
one guy, the first loss that the Rays suffered this season, he was on the mound.
Yikes. That's a shame.
Yeah.
All right.
That game is in New York.
So let's move on.
Yes, it's in New York.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the association.
Of National Basketball.
We are in the thick of the playoffs right now.
5 games into the conference semis.
Nobody has clinched a spot in the conference finals yet.
Every series is 3-2.
There you go. So we'll start. I guess we'll do the mailbag questions from Rashonda
Yeah, we can do
after
that.
we discuss what's happened so far.
However you want to do it. You're in the
I'm running
you
the
have
show.
the con.
This is the right week for me to run the show because this is where the NBA has reached a very juicy portion of the postseason where there's a lot of every series is relevant still. Let's start with Knicks Heat. So the Knicks were down 3-1, got to come home for Game 5, and held off a pretty spirited comeback effort from Miami, despite the fact that Jimmy Butler had probably his worst game of the postseason, which it's a pretty high bar to clear for his worst game of the postseason. He's been great in pretty much all of them, but he was held under 25 points for the first time. Didn't particularly play well down the stretch. Happens. You can't be perfect every night. There's a reason why you play 7. And the Knicks were able to eke out a win. It was their first win where they beat Miami at full strength, and also a win where they didn't benefit from Scott the Extender Foster like they did in Game 2, which was just an egregiously officiated game. It felt like Miami, like the officiating really turned that game against Miami, and I was, not surprised but disappointed nonetheless. But you got to figure Miami's going to take care of business at home in Game 6. That's tonight. So
especially given the fact
that's
that
not tonight. That's
Tomorrow
it's
night.
tomorrow night. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's
I'm getting
tomorrow.
mixed up.
But the Knicks had like a 19-point lead. It was either late third quarter or early fourth quarter, and they gave all of it up basically.
Yeah.
Like the Heat got back to within 3 or 2 points at one point. Like I thought that the Heat were going to pull it out. It looked like the Knicks had just completely collapsed,
Yeah.
and it was like, yeah, this was predictable, and
Yeah.
somehow they managed to hold on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Julius Randle, after Game 4, basically said that I guess the Heat just want it more. I'm like, very astute observation, Julius, because that's what I saw too. The only difference is I'm not actually playing in the game, you are, so why aren't you making a difference? But,
Because he doesn't want it as much. It's an admission.
yeah, he wasn't being sarcastic. He was telling the truth and just deadpanning to seem like he was being sarcastic. Nice trick. So I expect Miami to close it out in Game 6. They've been the more forceful team the entire series. Jimmy Butler's not going to probably play 2 bad games in a row. And again, bad is a relative term because Jimmy was fine. He just wasn't as good. I think he's gonna see the opportunity to get back to the conference finals, and he's not going to let it slip out of their hands when they're down in Miami. So I'm expecting Miami to take care of business in Game 6. So that leaves the other Eastern Conference series, which has become surprisingly spicy. Celtics-Sixers. The Sixers have an opportunity to punch their ticket to the conference finals for the first time probably since Allen Iverson played for them.
Since 2001, yeah.
Okay, really?
Yes.
So it was back when they made the
Really?
finals. Like,
Yes.
It's been that long.
It has been
So
that long.
over 20 years since the historic Sixers have been to the conference finals. Joel Embiid has been
Booty butt cheeks.
sure. He wasn't bad in Game 5, though. He played pretty well.
He has not impressed me. He looks like an old man.
He's got a little bit of an old man game to him, though, to be fair to him.
He looks slow. He looks anything but dominant. Like if if I was just going based in granted, I don't watch regular season NBA basketball. I tune in and even watching playoff basketball is kind of a recent aberration for me, as in the last couple of years and sort of in the bubble because that was the first sports we had in a long time.
It was high stakes.
If we were just going off of what I have observed, I'd be like, Joel Embiid does not belong on any of the 3 All-NBA teams. He's been terrible this postseason. He's not making an impact in their games. And largely for that reason, I don't trust them. I know they've got a 3-2 series lead, but if they do manage to pull this series out, and they could pull it out tonight, they're playing on their home court against the Celtics in just a little while. Even if they do get through Boston, I'll pick whoever wins the Knicks-Heat series to beat them and make it to the finals, even if it's the Knicks. And why the hell would I trust the Knicks?
I wouldn't trust the Knicks.
I wouldn't either, except I really don't trust the Sixers.
I would trust the Sixers more than I trust the Knicks. I don't think the Knicks are going to get there, so I don't think it matters. But, well, then you have to explain then if Embiid has played poorly, which I'm not sure I 100% agree with that, but he certainly hasn't been as dominant as you would expect an MVP to be.
Definitely has not been MVP level in this series.
Yeah.
Harden has made some big shots.
Harden dominated game 1 and game 4.
He completely took over those two. Tobias Harris has been a little bit streaky, but
that's just Tobias Harris.
Yeah, that's kind of how he is. And when they've needed him to step up, he's been a difference maker in the 3 games that they've won. So I think that's one of the big difference makers. The 2 games that they lost were kind of 2 off games of the series, in my opinion. And so he definitely makes an impact for them. And if he doesn't play well tonight, I don't think that they win. Obviously, it doesn't all fall on Tobias Harris' shoulders, but
he's the 4th best player on the team.
But for whatever reason, I don't know. When he's bad, it just seems like he lowers their floor so much.
Tobias Harris is the guy on the Sixers roster that everybody circles when asked the question, why won't Philly win the East? It's because Tobias Harris is on the roster. He is paid like a star, and he, in the playoffs, is typically a subpar role player. And I still feel that way about him. I consider him to be a little bit of a liability, but the Sixers' benefit is the fact that Tyrese Maxey has emerged as a budding all-star. He hasn't made an all-star game yet, but that's coming. He is what the Warriors hoped Jordan Poole would be. He was fantastic in Game 5.
Yeah, he was really good in Game 5. Games 3 and 4, though, he didn't really he didn't shoot the ball well at all. He's not a good passer. He still needs to be a lot more consistent than he's been.
Sure, that's fine. But when you're the 3rd best player on the team, you can afford to be a little inconsistent with that role. My feeling on Embiid was, I thought against the Nets, which was a walkover series for them, he looked bad at times because the Nets sold out to stop him. And something that I've been critical about of Embiid before is, and will continue to be until he proves otherwise, is he's not always the best at managing double teams, right? He knows how to handle double teams when they come early, but they don't. Once he puts the ball on the ground and then they send the double team, he can panic a little bit. He turns the ball over at times. He forces a shot. He holds the ball, doesn't know exactly what to do, and that sort of stalls out the Sixers' offense when they run everything exclusively through him. But as for his physical ability, when he came back from the injury in Game 2, I agree with you, Corey, I thought he looked terrible. And then Game 3, I didn't think he looked much better. And Game 4 didn't really look great either. Game 5 was when I felt like he turned a little bit of a corner. He started to feel more confident in his jump shot.
He actually took a few 3-pointers in that game, but he's shooting under 50% from the floor. And in 2 of those games, he shot significantly below 50% from the floor. Yeah. So he's been a liability as a shooter.
Yeah, and I think but I do believe that he's trending up in that direction. And I think last game his activity on defense was critical to every time Boston looked like they might make a run, Embiid made a big play on the defensive end, and it led to 4-point swings where Tatum went in for a layup and Embiid swatted it and led to a transition run out for a layup. Like, that is a part of a game where he can still impact the outcome regardless of whether or not he's scoring. So I think that if he provides that, also, you got to give credit to Philly's role players. Like, Anthony Melton was fantastic. Daniel House was unbelievable. Finished at the rim repeatedly over the Time Lord, over Al Horford, just making plays. That's the kind of effort they're going to need if they want to win the title. And they're obviously going to need Embiid to return to form. And again, I understand why he has, and he's been hurt. But that's been the story with Embiid every single year in the playoffs is he's been hurt. This time, though, it seems like he's getting the help from the other guys. And to talk about Boston, what the hell's going on with Boston? There's no excuse for them to be down 3-2. There's no excuse for them to be on the verge of losing this series. And
They're the defending
got their
Eastern
coach
Conference
fired.
champions.
they not only are they the defending Eastern Conference champions, they were the favorites to win the title at the start of the regular season, at the start of the postseason, the Bucks were slightly favored ahead of them, but then Giannis got hurt. Celtics immediately became the favorites to win the title, and now they're down 3-2. They've thoroughly blown home court advantage. They lost 2 games in Boston. The unspeakable happened. Whenever I see a team lose game 3 at home, I just write them off because I'm like, you guys aren't serious. If you can't get up for this game, you're not going to get up for any game. And then suddenly the Sixers win the next 2, and I'm just like, what the hell's going on with you guys? And what's going on with Boston? They don't seem to have that level of focus. Ime Udoka had this team in lockstep last year, where there was an identity to them. There was an energy to them on the defensive end. Like, last year's Celtics team would never have let the Sixers score as easily as they did down the stretch of that game in Game 5. So I don't know what's going on. Joe Mazzulla has not done the job as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, firing Ime Udoka was done for non-basketball reasons, and I'm not going to speculate on why because they've kept everything hush. I have to assume that it was done for a good cause, but we talked about it affecting this basketball team. It kind of got swept under the rug because the Celtics overachieved offensively during the regular season, and everybody said, everything's fine. And I looked at them, I said, no, not everything's fine. Their identity last year was on the defensive end, and that slipped massively during the regular season, and that's carried over to the playoffs. This is supposed to be cruise control for them. They got the luckiest breaks they could. Last year, they played the toughest set of games they could have. They drew the Nets in the first round as a 7th seed with a healthy Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and they swept them. Then they went through the Bucks in the second round. Then they had to deal with playoff Jimmy, and then they had to deal with Golden State, and they ultimately lost. This year, they get to avoid playoff Jimmy. They get the Hawks instead. Then they get to face the Sixers with a gimpy Embiid, and then they get potentially the worst version of the Heat or the Knicks. How are you not winning the East easily? Like, what is wrong with y'all? So, there's also been talks about do the Celtics need to break up the Jays, like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown? And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's in these guys' heads, but you can't tell me that Jaylen Brown, who has always carried himself like a superstar, that's who he believes he is. He believes he's the guy, even with Tatum on the team. You can't tell me that he's not looking at this situation saying, I wish I had a better opportunity to be the man here. And I'm not going to say I agree that he's better than Tatum, but I am going to say that if that's how he wants to play, then you're going to sub-optimize him if he's going to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah. So let's move on to the West. We've got the Nuggets and the Suns playing Game 6 tonight in Phoenix. Yep. No Chris Paul. He is not back. There was speculation that maybe he could return for Game 6. They ruled him out outright for Games 3, 4, and 5 after he suffered the groin injury late in Game 2. But then they've ruled him out pretty early in the process for Game 6. I'd be shocked if he was back for a potential Game 7 in Denver. So that's not really a huge surprise. The surprise news was the fact that DeAndre Ayton is also out tonight. So the fearsome foursome that was supposed to carry this thin Suns team over the top is now down to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, which might actually help them.
Think so?
Because DeAndre Ayton was unplayable against Nikola Jokic. Jokic destroyed him every single time they were on the floor together. Jack Landale has given them much better minutes off the bench. Now, Landale playing 32 minutes versus 15, 16, a little different. But for the job that's at hand, which is stop the big guy or at least slow him down or irritate him, Landale has been better. Because Embiid's value to the team, I talked about this before when they made this trade, it gets diminished because his value is he's a worthwhile scorer. But you've already got two guys that are way better at that than you now. So you're not getting the touches. So your role is now going to have to be that of a standard big man. Go bruise somebody in the paint, go defend the post, protect the rim, and get rebounds. Well, he ain't doing any of that against Nikola Jokic. So he's not really serving in the function that he needs to serve in. And I think, honestly, he hates the Suns. I think he hates being there. He felt disrespected by them last year when they didn't immediately offer him an extension on his rookie contract. They were willing to let him go into restricted free agency until they ultimately decided to extend him, which basically forced them together because the Suns clearly didn't think he was worth it, but they had to retain him because letting him walk for nothing would be ludicrous. And Ayton didn't have a choice on where he went because restricted free agency dictates that if your team matches any offer, they get to retain you. So that's how he ends up staying in Phoenix, but it's not working out. And since you've clearly made the decision to move on to a core of Booker and Durant going forward, and with Chris Paul being ancient and not really part of the long-term future, Ayton's value as a pick-and-roll partner disappears. So you have to build your team differently around the skills of your two stars, and your two stars are now Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. I don't think Ayton fits with this team. I think there's going to need to be a trade made there, and I think that's where the Suns could potentially turn into a true contender next year if they can adequately supplement Kevin Durant and Devin Booker going forward. But right now, this team just simply doesn't have enough, and honestly, I think they're getting packed up tonight.
Is there a trade partner you have in mind for them?
No, I'm not Bill Simmons with the fake trade machine. I don't have all of that. Because the thing is, I just don't know how much Ayton's value on the quote-unquote market has diminished due to his poor play and seeming not great attitude.
Is there somebody that you think that the Suns should try to get for him? Obviously, it might not work out, but is there someone you have in mind that could be on the trade market who would be a good supplement for Booker and Durant, who maybe isn't wanted somewhere else?
It's tough to say, because again, you have to get equal value back for him. You can't trade him for pennies on the dollar just because you need to get him out of town.
Right.
And again, the people that the Suns are going to want, the teams that have them are probably going to want them too. So it's hard to say. I admittedly have not done my homework on this because it's not the off season.
Yeah.
I don't know who's a free agent. I don't know who's on an expiring contract. Those are questions for people that are a little bit deeper into these things.
Yeah.
And maybe I will get there when we get to June, but I'm just not there yet. So we'll see. Again, the series isn't over, so let's be clear. The Suns could still win tonight. I don't think they will. I think it's way harder to win a Game 6 down 3-2 when you're at home, to be honest, because what are you getting if you win? Another flight back to Denver and a likely ass kicking to go home in 7. So I just feel like if they start getting beat, they might just mail it in and say, better luck next year.
Couple questions for you, Eric. I mean, is tonight's game in Phoenix going to look like when the Suns got eliminated last year when they lost by 65 points or something?
I don't think we're ever going to see that again.
That was ridiculous.
That was a historic embarrassment. I honestly can't explain what happened there. And I think the expectations for the Suns are low enough that you won't see that complete collapse. Because I believe that I've talked about this in football. Talked about it during the Super Bowl. Talked about it before. Teams that have a feeling that they're the best and have had the feeling that they're the best team all year, whether it's because they had a lucky break with injuries compared to everybody else, which I think the Suns did last year when they were the 1 seed, or they just have depth or whatever, they feel like nobody can touch them. The instant things start to go wrong, they collapse. And that's what happened to the Suns. As soon as Luka came out and hit his first 3 or 4 shots, they were like, oh no, it's going to be one of those games where we just can't stop Luka. And they got tight. And more than just the team on the floor, the crowd gets tight, right? Again, I abuse my friend and co-host Evan with this all the time. The Baltimore Ravens crowd, as soon as Lamar threw that tipped pick against the Titans, the crowd puckered. They all went, oh no, I can't believe this is happening. What just happened? And the game was over from that instant. This is not the same situation. The Suns feel like they're the underdogs. They should be the underdogs for this series. And if they lose, they've got things to look forward to because they've gotten Kevin Durant and they've got Devin Booker, who has emerged as a bona fide superstar in this playoff run. I didn't think he'd ever reach these heights. I didn't think he would ever be this good, but he's this good. And if he stays at this level and Durant is able to maintain his level and they, again, supplement this team with the right pieces, they're going to be a threat to win the West next year.
All right, I got another question about the Nuggets. So I remember back toward the end of the regular season, the discussion was about Jokic winning the MVP and how it was so absurd for him to win the MVP for the third year in a row. And because it was kind of assumed that the Nuggets weren't going to be able to make any noise in the playoffs. At this point, they're up 3-2 in the conference semifinals, so they're likely to move on to the conference finals. And they're going to play either a Warriors team that, only plays hard when they want to, or a Lakers team that's missing Anthony Davis for something.
Not likely. Anthony Davis is probable to play tomorrow. He's not. He's not in the concussion protocol.
Thought he was carted off in a wheelchair.
I'll talk about that when we get to that.
We'll talk about that next. But it sounds like he's expected to play.
Okay.
Yeah. This is also, though, why I made the point of mentioning the fact that he was already a two-time MVP with limited playoff success as a result. If anything, this just validates him winning those awards. It doesn't mean that they got it wrong by not giving him a third in a row. Because, again, with 3 MVPs in a row, I expect you to be rolling to the finals every year. Like, one trip to the finals doesn't make me say, oh, yeah, we messed up by not giving you 3 in a row. If anything, it validates his success. It makes him out to be the player that the MVP says he is. And I said that if Jokic had no playoff success this year, MVP or no MVP, if they got washed out in the second round by the Suns, people are going to look back on this and say, wait, this guy won 2 MVPs in a row and never made a conference finals in that stretch? It's going to raise eyebrows. But, the fact that they're making this run, and largely because Jokic has been incredible in this postseason, it validates, and again, it doesn't surprise me because I knew Jokic was great. I knew he was that level of player. I thought that they erred by giving him the MVP last year when his team was a 6 seed and had zero chance of making any noise in the playoffs. I just thought that was not the purpose of the award. The award is to validate somebody's performance and prognosticate that they can win a championship. And everybody knew the Suns couldn't. The Nuggets couldn't. They probably should have known the Suns couldn't either. So I think that this it helps add to it, and it'll put him right back in the conversation next year. You won't be seeing him have anybody saying, oh, well, you can't give him the MVP award 3 out of 4 years if he goes and wins a title, because he would have proven himself to be the best player in basketball. So he certainly deserves to be in the conversation going forward.
Embiid just had a ridiculous turnover, and then he missed a easy jumper on the next drive.
Corey's in his bag hating on Embiid now. I kind of like it.
Are you going to take over for Tony Kornheiser listing off his career accomplishments?
Well, now he has an accomplishment. He has an MVP award.
He does.
Yeah. And now we're going to be talking about him not making the conference finals if they lose this game and lose the next one.
But at least it's only his first MVP.
Yeah, you can dismiss 1, 2.
Mm-hmm.
2, you got to make some noise. All right, let's talk about Lakers and Warriors. So Game 5 was last night. Golden State won.
I was a little bit surprised.
I was not. I was not surprised that Golden State won that game. I think the Warriors had too much pride to go out there and lose on their home floor in 5 games to a team that, frankly, has obviously beaten them 3 out of 4 times, or had beaten them 3 out of 4 times at that point, but hadn't really, in my opinion, outplayed them drastically. Right? Both games in LA were, or Game 1 was close, Game 4 was close. Both went the Lakers' way. So I figured the Golden State would turn it up because they're desperate. I figured LA would probably be less focused because they didn't need to be focused on this game. They got Game 6 at home, and so that's what's going to happen tomorrow night. So the Warriors came out and played pretty well. The role players really stepped up. Wiggins was great. Draymond Green had an excellent game scoring the basketball. Played with a lot of aggression. They got something. Moses Moody made some more threes, but Jordan Poole was still bad.
Yep.
And Clay was still bad. And Steph was good but couldn't shoot.
Until the end. He made a couple of threes at the end to seal things because the Lakers were making it semi-interesting in the final minutes.
Yeah, and Steph was great from two, but his three-point shot hasn't been there for the last couple of games. So whether or not that's a product of him being fatigued or it's just a mini slump.
It would certainly be understandable if he's a little fatigued.
Yeah, but they're going to need him to not be fatigued for Game 6 and potentially Game 7.
Game 7.
So, take a B12 shot or something. Do something, Steph, because the team needs you, apparently. Like, they can't win without you cooking. So, Game 6 in LA, Anthony Davis will probably play. That man is concussed. You can't convince me that he's not concussed. I mean, he couldn't see. He couldn't walk. He looked in a daze minutes after the contact with Looney's forearm happened. That man is concussed.
We're going to find out in 10 years that there's
Find out.
Well, no, what I mean is we're going to find out in 10 years that there's some medical ailment called a super concussion or something that we have no understanding of right now, where somehow you can still pass the tests that say that you're not concussed, but you're dealing with even more severe brain injury somehow. I don't know what it's going to be, but we're going to find out that's what happened to Tua. He actually did pass the concussion protocol, but he was super concussed or something stupid like that.
No. Let's just use basic logic and say that the teams involved were corrupt and didn't give a fair test. Super concussions, undetectable concussions. Get out of here, man. Yeah, he's concussed.
Well, because how else do you explain a team that would be pretty blatant to be yeah, we had to take him off the field in a wheelchair because he couldn't see and he couldn't walk. But hey, he's not actually concussed.
Yeah, that does not pass the smell test as far as I'm concerned. But we understand that,
dude is wobbling as he walks off the field.
Again,
can't walk straight. He's not concussed.
We saw it with Tua where they put him back out there even though they shouldn't have. They're going to do the same thing with Anthony Davis, and obviously these accusations I'm making that he's concussed are unproven and unprovable because I don't live in the locker room, but I have eyes and I have a brain and I can see what's going on. And that's okay. I'd rather Anthony Davis be out there. Obviously, I prefer him to be healthy. I prefer him to take care of his mentals in this case and make sure that he's good. But, in terms of the game of basketball, I'd prefer Davis to be on the floor for however this series unfolds, because not only do I think the Lakers are going to win Game 6, assuming Davis isn't out there loopy the whole game, which he could be if he's concussed. I think that if the Lakers advance, Anthony Davis being healthy is paramount to us getting a very competitive Western Conference Finals. And while I think that if Golden State is able to pull this series out, they're able to win Game 6 on the road and then come back to San Francisco and win Game 7. Obviously, I would trust them to be competitive with the Nuggets too, just because they got Steph Curry. So either way, I'm happy, but I'm disappointed if the Lakers get to the conference finals and Anthony Davis is cooked. He needs to be out there. He's their best player at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, this series, I get the feeling that this series could still be far from over. It's weird because I was so certain going into Game 5 that the Lakers were going to wind up winning that game. Coming off of Game 6, I don't know. In some ways, it's a little bit frustrating, these playoffs, just because in so many ways it feels like these series are following scripts. Because how else do you explain both teams in every series seemingly getting a blowout win over the other team? A blowout win is supposed to indicate that you are way better than that other team. But if both teams are blowing each other out in different games, it just feels like I don't like that concept of teams like resting on certain days during the playoffs. Like your goal should be to win a series in 4 games so you get some rest before the next series.
Yeah.
You should be trying anything possible to avoid having a series extend to 7 games. But if you're just going to sit here like, oh, we're on the road in game 5 and we have a 2-game lead, so we're just going to rest and focus on game 6 at home. Well, what happens if you play so poorly in game 5 that you're not, you're not prepared to play at your level in game 6 and you blow that opportunity at home, and now you are facing elimination on the road in game 7 when you were up 3-1.
It is absolutely irresponsible for any team who's up 3-1 in a series, especially against the Golden State Warriors, to just give away a game.
Right? I mean, especially when you won both home games initially, but the Warriors have won a road game in 28 straight playoff series.
Mm-hmm. One of those was this series reminds me a little bit of 2016. They were playing Oklahoma City.
Yep.
Oklahoma City took game 1 in Oakland at the time. Then Golden State came back and got game 2. Then Oklahoma City held home court for their 2, went up 3-1. The Warriors managed to grab game 5. And then they get game 6 in Oklahoma City, and then they won game 7 in Oakland and went to the NBA Finals. So, like, the path is there.
Yeah.
Like, if they win game 6.
And you've just given the Warriors an opportunity to extend that streak.
Like, I think that they played with a certain level of urgency, but not enough. Like, I think that they went out there and said, if we can win it, let's win it, but we're not going to chase it if we're down a certain number of points. Like, there was a give-up factor there
that
once they
sounds
got down
ridiculous
double
to me
digits.
because it's the playoffs. Like, your season can end if you mess around, right? So like, you got to bring it for all 7 games.
Yeah, and that's why
you already won 2 close games. If we're going to see a regression to the mean, the Warriors are going to win 2 close games. And you just gave them the opportunity to have those close games.
Yeah, so there's legitimate concern here as far as I'm concerned about, the Lakers. I think they'll still win because they're at home. They've won all their home playoff games, but, like, people were discussing ridiculously after they went up 3-1. I saw a thing on First Take. Like, I didn't watch First Take. I saw it on Twitter. It said, should the Lakers rest their starters for game 5? Just give away a playoff game. Like, you get 7 to win 4 and you're going to give one away? Are you out of your mind? Like, just absurd levels of stupidity and arrogance, with regards to the situation. But, again, Davis will be out there. Davis presumably will have his wits about him. Maybe. I don't know.
His faculties.
And that is, to me, the deciding factor. I also think that Steve Kerr has found some things that can be used to attack this team. It's just a question of, will he actually stick to them? Or will he revert to some of the nonsense that he loves to run and blow this game? Because he blew game 1 and he blew game 4 on similar ways.
Is Steve Kerr on your list?
I'm not going to put him on my list yet.
Okay. I mean, 4 championships.
He's had a lot of success.
Keeps him off your list.
I can't quite put him on the list yet.
I'm laughing because the 76ers have scored 3 points in more than 5 minutes.
Not great.
Yeah, they're 1 for 11. They're down 15-3.
Suboptimal.
No, not awesome.
That's not good. The other thing that the Lakers allowed to have happen in Game 5 was that Wiggins finally showed up. And we remember last year Wiggins was instrumental to the Warriors' finals run. Mm-hmm. And now you've got him feeling pretty good. He shot over 50% from the floor, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, so pretty solid numbers there. If he can keep that momentum going into games 6 and 7, suddenly it's not as big of a deal that Jordan Poole sucks and that Clay has not been playing at his best.
Sucks.
Clay is knocking down some good threes, but he's not really been a factor in any other aspect of the game.
Yeah, and he's been ice cold the last 2 games. So.
And was it Game 4 when it was Game 4 when the Warriors looked like they had a good shot to win early, and then just completely unraveled after Clay forgot how to run the fast break.
That was Game 3.
Was that Game 3?
Game 4, the Warriors were up by 3. Clay takes a 30-footer, and then takes another contested with 2 hands in his face 3-point shot with 14 seconds on the shot clock for 2 empty possessions in a row, and that's what allowed the Lakers to take the lead. So he's not playing smart or well. So, he needs to step up. And another concern I have is everybody hears about Game 6 Klay, right? Klay Thompson has a series of historic performances in Game 6s, including that game I mentioned in Oklahoma City. I believe that has led to Klay Thompson believing in the press clippings about Game 6 Klay. And so he comes out and he tries to blow the doors off a team all by himself, and he shoots his team out of the game. Like we saw it in the NBA Finals. The Warriors were up 22 points after Steph hit the long three and did the ring me thing in the middle of the third quarter, and for all intents and purposes, the game looked over. And then Klay tried to be Game 6 Klay, and
even though they didn't need him to be at that point, the game's over.
He froze Steph out for the next 6 minutes of play, took a bunch of dumb shots. The Celtics went on a run and cut it to 10 before the fourth quarter started. And then Jordan Poole and Steph had to hold off the Celtics, who were trying to come back at that point. This is my concern. Thompson has started playing with a degree of selfishness that he didn't play with before his injuries. And if he's not hitting his shots, he could cost this team. And as for Wiggins, because you mentioned him, I think a big part of the reason why he got it going was because they finally started involving him in pick-and-roll action. One of the adjustments that Darvin Ham made was Draymond Green was being covered by Anthony Davis, so they ran typical Steph Dre pick and roll, and Davis was left out on the perimeter, and they could attack the mismatches there. So then the Lakers made the adjustment of putting Davis on Wiggins, and instead of running pick and roll with Wiggins, instead he continued to run it with Draymond or went away from it altogether because he didn't. That's not their optimal play, is to have Wiggins receiving the pass off of the double team on Steph. But the thing is, Wiggins isn't as adept of a passer as Draymond is. He's not as experienced in that position, and the floor spacing is going to be a little bit different if Draymond is the one on the perimeter instead of Wiggins. But what Wiggins can do that Draymond can't is he can attack downhill against somebody that has to potentially cover 2 spots. And he's going to be able to finish against a late contest against pretty much anybody but Anthony Davis, but Anthony Davis is on the perimeter now. So I saw a couple of times where he went downhill and he made finishes around the rim that Draymond could never finish. Draymond would get swatted. Draymond would just throw the ball off the backboard. He would miss erratically, and that's something that Wiggins doesn't do. Wiggins can go in there and score. Is it as optimal? No. But is it good offense? Yes. And in a series against a team that relies on defense to beat you, take good offense. Don't let great be the enemy of good here. And they finally started doing that, and that's part of the reason why Wiggins was able to get off and get a lot of points.
Yeah.
So that leaves us to our mailbag questions from Corey's wife, Rashonda. The first one is any revisions on who you think will come out of the East and West? Well, considering that I wasn't confident in anybody coming out of the West coming into the playoffs, I guess I will amend that because I do think the Denver Nuggets are playing pretty damn well. I have concerns about them that I have mentioned repeatedly. I do not trust Jamal Murray as the second best player on a title team. I think that is a recipe for disaster. But given the fact that nobody else in the West has shown any level of ability to rise to a level above them, I think they've got to be the favorites to win the Western Conference and be a threat to win the title.
I'm going to stick with the Warriors for one reason. Because
you picked them before and you haven't lost it yet, so stick with the pick. Well, I didn't pick the Warriors, really. I kind of just said, maybe they might be the best of a bad group, but Corey said they're going to win the finals. The whole thing.
I did.
You did. I
will amend that one, though.
Also, Corey also killed the buzz for the Corgi because, the Corgi
has been wrong on everything so far.
If you are unfamiliar with the Corgi, there's a video of him supposedly picking the Lakers-Warriors series with a series of ball boops into some baskets that were labeled for the two teams.
Speaking of which, Sean Nibbler needs to step his game up.
Yeah, that's way cooler. So the Corgi ended up picking the outcome, effectively the first 5 games of Warriors-Lakers correctly. He picked Lakers in Game 1, Warriors Game 2, Lakers in Game 3 and 4, and then Warriors in Game 5. He also picked Warriors in Game 6 and Warriors in Game 7. So,
Wow.
But this would be the first series that the Corgi picks right of the playoffs. If
this
that
is why
happens.
you're killing the buzz. You should have just let it be. You had to ruin the good time with your facts, like a journalist major, that you are, and the guy who runs the thing.
I run a few things.
You run everything. You run here. This isn't even a pay job. Yeah. So anyway, I think that the Nuggets have to be considered the favorites to win the West. I think that the Lakers jumped ahead according to the Vegas odds, but that was when they went up 3-1 and the Nuggets were 2-2. So there was a little bit less certainty in them getting out of their series. Whereas right now the Nuggets are clearly the favorites to win against the Suns, and they're in virtually the same position as the Lakers are, where they're up 3-2. So I'm pretty sure the Nuggets have moved ahead as the favorites, just because how much can you really trust the Lakers? Like they just haven't shown an ability to be counted on. But Corey's having a fit of laughter because I guess
It's 12 is Tobias Harris, right?
Yeah.
He just had a really ugly layup attempt.
Yeah,
It wasn't even close. Didn't even hit the rim off
It led
the
to a
backboard.
transition Boston 3 to put them up 6 when it looked like
It had been a 9-0 run since the Time Lord left the game.
Yeah, but that's Time Lord. He's really valuable.
Yeah, Evan's favorite nickname.
I have no idea who that is.
As we've said
told
all
me
the
like
times,
4
Robert
times,
Williams
and I
III.
still don't
Robert
know.
Williams III. He's got long
Robert
dreadlocks and a
Williams, you
headband.
said?
Robert Williams III. Yes, he
The
plays for
third.
Boston.
From Boston.
Boston. All right, so the second mailbag question, or actually, no, I didn't say the East.
Yeah, we still got to do the East.
This is tough
No,
because,
it's not. It's not tough. It's easy. It's not hard. It's easy.
You want me to pick playoff Jimmy, don't you?
It's the Heat.
You think the Heatles are going to
The
get
Heat
there?
are going to win the finals.
They're going to win the title,
They're
huh?
going to win the finals.
You know what? I hope you're right, because I love Jimmy Butler, and I would love to
He
see him get
deserves
a ring.
it.
Oh, yes.
We were on this show when we got the Woj bomb that Jimmy had been traded to the 76ers.
Yes, and I lost my mind.
You did.
Yeah, I was crazy. I didn't expect that.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Pretty cool.
Was that season 1 or was that season 2? I don't remember.
I think it was season 1 because it was in.
What season are we in now? 5?
Yeah, we're in 5.
We've been doing this forever. We're gonna be dead and still doing this. So anyway, Eastern Conference. Corey really wants me to back the Heat. I don't know. It's tough because I still think they're undermanned, but who else has earned it, right? Like, who else has shown me anything that can get me excited about them, right? Like, Boston's currently winning this game, but I don't trust them to hold on to this lead necessarily or win Game 7 at home. Like, they got booed at home.
They did.
That was pretty bad.
And Marcus Smart also has that stupid green hair.
That's true. He does have the stupid green hair.
Yes.
But Philly's getting it going a little bit, so we'll see if they can go. I do believe, though. I don't know. I have no reason to believe this, but I do think in my own head, my head canon here, Tyler Hero is going to be back in the conference finals. I have no idea what his status is. I'm just assuming. He got hurt early in the first series, broke his hand. He could be back. It will have been like 6 weeks.
It was a torn ACL for Vic, right?
Yeah, he's done.
Yeah, he's
toast. And I don't think he was... Love Vic, but he wasn't really a big part of the rotation anyway. But Tyler Hero is valuable for them offensively. If he can come back and contribute, that's going to be a big deal for the Heat and their prospects to win the championship. So, yeah. I'm going with the Heat, too.
Yes!
Why not?
Yes!
Let's roll the dice. Let's go with the Miami Heat. If I can't pick a team because I trust them, I'm going to pick the team I want to win. And the Heat are the team I want to see win the Eastern Conference. So I'm going to go with them. Okay, so that resolves that mailbag question, which was, I had to revise things and I still feel like I have no clarity because none of these teams look like a champion to me. But, Jimmy Butler looks like a champion to me.
He
so
sure
I'm going
does.
to root for him. So does Nikola Jokic. I will give him his credit.
It's 25 Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, he's good.
Just knocked down a 3 and from
He
the
hit
corner.
a 3 on the previous possession. He's cooking.
Yeah.
All right. The second mailbag question is a pretty presumptuous question, and I love it so much. Where will Draymond Green play next year? Indicating that he may not be with Golden State next year, which is plausible, right?
You'd be remiss,
Right? Like he's got a player option, but Draymond has particularly in the last game, and I assume he's going to attempt to play like this level for as long as Golden State is still alive in the playoffs. He's playing for a bigger contract than just his option. He wants a max extension from somebody, and I think that if he plays well enough, he's going to get it because he was instrumental in them winning that game.
He played great yesterday.
And he was huge defensively against Davis in Game 2. Mm-hmm. He's been huge against Davis even in the games they've lost, right? Like, he's been very, very valuable, especially to this Golden State team. And I've always said that Draymond is more valuable to Golden State than he is to anybody else because offensively he's able to hide his limitations because he plays with Steph. So, but if he goes out there and can be a defensive anchor for somebody, you can't tell me people won't line up to pay him if he proves he could still be that guy. So I just don't know who really has the role for him other than the Warriors.
Can the Warriors afford to give him a max extension?
That's another part of the equation is how much money is Joe Lacob willing to spend. They're already well into the luxury tax. They are repeat offenders, if you will, which means even bigger penalties for going above the threshold. And it seems like beyond just the fact that he has to pay through the nose from his own pocket, the owners are pissed at him. Like there's a feeling with the Warriors around the league that the fact that Lacob has thus far been willing to spend the exorbitant amount of money to maintain this roster has sort of been a workaround their plan to not allow teams to do this. And so they feel like he's kind of cheating the system. Resembles Dan Snyder and Jerry Jones violating the salary cap in an uncapped year. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
It feels like there's some inner workings with the NBA owners that are putting a lot of pressure on him to make decisions that get him more in line with everybody else and not spending so much money. So I don't know what the plan is. I do know that Lacob also planned on having this 2 timelines thing, which is a big part of the reason why the Warriors aren't as good as they should be. It's because they've insisted on investing a whole lot of roster space in this, group of rookies and young players like Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody and James Wiseman before he was shipped out of town. So I don't know how committed he is to continuing to build around Steph and Draymond. Like, I don't know if he wants to move things around, shake things up, what have you. I'm just not sure how interested he is in retaining Draymond Green. And I feel like it's got to be a situation where Poole's got to go, right? Like, no matter what, he's got to go out the door. They got to find a way to move Jordan Poole.
Do you think they're going to?
Yeah, I think they will. Okay. I think Poole's going to be up out of there. Especially, though, if they entertain the idea of bringing Draymond back. Those two can't coexist. Like, I don't care what anybody says. You can't get knocked out by a teammate at work and then have the video go viral on the interwebs for everybody to see and then just not have that relationship be affected permanently. It's just not going to happen.
What will... Let's say the Warriors decide that they can't afford to pay Draymond. They make the decision not to keep him.
Yeah.
What effect, if any, will that have on Steph's relationship with the Warriors? Because he has, throughout his career, repeatedly gone to bat for Draymond. He has continually advocated for wanting Draymond as his teammate.
Yep.
Like, more so than he's gone about for anybody else.
Yep. I think that if they ultimately decide to let him go, him being Draymond, I have to imagine that they at least got something of a begrudging acceptance from Steph. Like, I don't believe that if Steph went in there and raised hell and said, you got to bring this guy back, I don't think there's any way the Warriors would straight up defy Steph Curry. I know he doesn't have the power to make the call. He's not the GM. He's not the owner. But he is bigger than everybody else in the room. Okay, he matters more to that franchise than I think any other active player matters to their franchise. In fact, I don't even think it's close.
Even more than LeBron to the Lakers?
Yeah, LeBron's not really a Laker. He's a rental. They got him in his golden years in the NBA. He's been there for 5 years. He won one title.
It seems like they've kind of bowed to all of
franchise.
his whims as far as who he wants on that team, though.
Sure, because they want to win, but they didn't, though. Because he wanted them to trade Russell Westbrook last year. They said no. He wanted them to trade Russell Westbrook well before they did. He wanted Kyrie Irving. They said no. Okay, so that they made moves to suit the team
True.
to win, and they did a
Yeah.
good job. I give them credit for that. But it wasn't like they just handed the reins to LeBron James. Genie Bus ain't going to do that.
How likely is Steph to accept them not bringing back Draymond, however begrudgingly it might be?
I think there's a better chance than usual just because of the Draymond antics from the beginning of the season to him getting suspended to the Podmon thing. I think that Steph might be a little bit more amenable to it. Again, I'm not friends with Steph Curry, so I don't know these things. But I feel like if there's any time for him to say, okay, it's time to consider moving on just because it's impossible to do all the things we want to do and keep Draymond, I think this would be the year that it happened. But I still believe Steph is going to go to bat for him to some extent. It just might not be as forceful as usual, and he might be willing to acquiesce. So, to answer the question, I don't know where the hell Draymond's going to go. I would still say the most likely spot would be he's going to be back in Golden State, but we will see.
Any chance he could be a Laker?
He loves LeBron. He loves LeBron.
Could they?
I thought he hated LeBron.
No, he
With the
loves
super
he likes
teams
LeBron.
and stuff.
Could they? Would their games clash, or would they mesh together?
I think Draymond could find a role on the team. It wouldn't be as pronounced as it is with Golden State because he wouldn't have the ball as much. But I think defensively, and as a guy that mucks it up and who can take a little bit of that pressure off of Anthony Davis with Draymond Green in the front court with Anthony Davis and LeBron when he's engaged on defense, nobody's scoring on that team. Like that is a defensive nightmare, and you can kind of overcome some of the offensive struggles that might come with having Draymond on the floor if your defense is that good.
Okay.
So the current score is Boston 32, Philly 22. Boston's making all their threes apparently, which means they're going to win because when they're hot, they win. When they're not, they're stupid and can't do anything else. So Philly's going to go back to Boston for Game 7 maybe. That could be spicy. Harden just hit a mid-range jumper. That exhausts our topics for the day.
Yep.
So certainly a short show for us. It's only 8:17. What do you make of that? Not a whole lot going on except for the NBA playoffs. So
Yankees are down 1-0,
which
which means that Drew Rasmussen is pitching well. He hasn't given up any runs through 4 innings.
So you kind of got a little Larry David thing going on there, where your team's losing, but fantasy pitchers doing well.
Yeah.
So how you feeling about that? You kind of in between. You don't.
I don't
care.
know how to feel.
That's the whole meme. Exactly.
I'm losing right now against Drew, so I need my guys to do something. But I also have
hostile.
I also have way more pitcher starts left than he has, so I don't necessarily need this one to be really good.
That sounds really hostile. I'm losing against Drew. Like that can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you
Well,
saying?
no, I'm just losing in general cannot happen. I'm the 2-time defending champion.
Okay. Well, there was a tone there that suggested that
It has nothing to do with Drew.
It sounded like it had something to do.
No,
with
it has to do with me losing to anybody.
Well, you lost to me.
Yeah, that was inexcusable.
Salty. Evan
You suck.
Evan lost to me too.
You haven't made
I'm
a
actually
playoffs.
beating people in this league. That never happens.
Have you made a playoffs in this league?
There's been 2.
There's
And I
been
missed
2,
both
and you
times.
missed both.
Yeah.
Yeah, your team is garbage.
It's not garbage this year.
It's cabbage.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Maybe it's very sexy garbage.
Very sexy garbage is coming to town. Go see him.
Oh.
I don't mean Nighthawk. All right, so that wraps up our topics, as I said before we went on
I've
the
got a
tangent.
couple things.
Evan's got a couple things. What you got, Evan?
Yeah. The Kentucky Derby was this past Saturday. A horse called Mage won. That is not the horse that I bet on. So,
Or Mag. Was it
Madge?
Madge, as somebody in the bar that I was at watching the race kept insisting. All 4 of them kept insisting, oh yeah, it's Madge. You kidding me? You've never seen the word mage?
Somebody needs some hooked on phonics there. What's going on?
You never seen? Yeah, I'm in a rage all the time when my team loses.
Okay, we got it. All right, Evan, tell us about the Derby.
I didn't watch it because I was at Cedar Point.
What?
Yeah. Are you surprised that I was at Cedar Point?
No, I was surprised you didn't watch it because you always make a big deal about these races. Meanwhile, I actually did watch it, and I never care about these races. But I had my first ever mint julep, and it was delicious.
Oh, okay. I think the most relevant thing to come out of the Kentucky Derby was that 7 horses died at Churchill Downs in the lead up to the Kentucky Derby last week, including 2 that were euthanized on Saturday after they got hurt in a race. So
I thought you were going to say the most relevant thing was the fight that broke out in the crowd where somebody ended up with a super bloody face.
ooh, I'm gonna have to check YouTube for that. That sounds entertaining.
A lot more entertaining than finding out that 7 horses died in the lead up. Like, how does this keep happening?
I don't know.
This is not the first time that this topic has appeared on this show.
No. It's horses are strange animals because like they weigh like 1,200 pounds, but they have these spindly little legs. Like, that just doesn't seem like a good combination to me. But yeah, it shouldn't be like this, right? There shouldn't be horses dying, over the course of a week. I think somebody needs to do some investigating and figure out what the problem is. Maybe are they taking care of the dirt and grass, or does it have potholes in it and stuff? Is it compacted properly? Like, what's going on with that? Another thing I wanted to mention, we talked at length about the NFL schedule and how stupid it is. The schedule came out about 20 minutes ago, and I have some complaints about the Ravens schedule, of course. My main complaint is that the Ravens have 4 primetime games, and 3 of them are on the road, including Christmas night in San Francisco.
Well, Christmas is on a Monday. Oh, yeah. That's prime time. You didn't say Sunday night. You said prime time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Christmas night in San Francisco. So no Ravens 49ers followed by or preceded by a trip to California's Great America for us this year. Though that sounds really expensive anyway. So there's that. The Thursday night game is at home against Cincinnati. So I do like that. And the bye week is week 13, which I also like.
I hate the week. There should not be bye weeks that late in the season. Week 12 should be the last bye week.
Oh, I mean, the fantasy playoffs will be week 14, 15, 16. Or 15, 16, 17, rather.
No, our fantasy playoffs are 16, 17. Wait.
There's 18 weeks
in
now.
the season.
So, if
16,
you have a
17
3-round playoff.
Oh, yes. Yeah, just 16 and
17.
17. Yeah, 16 and 17. For a second, I forgot how many rounds of playoffs we have. I was like 16, 17, 18. Wait a second, 18. No,
Nope,
that's not right.
We're not quite the college football playoff level.
No, we're not the CFP.
I don't like the week 13 bye week, partly because we have like the week 13, 14, 15 round robin of division games to figure out our playoff spots. And so I don't like that there's a bye week in the midst of that.
Oh, I don't think that
should matter to the NFL. Our specific fantasy football schedule should matter to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they should care more about us than player safety.
I'm going to write something to Roger Goodell.
Yeah, I'm sure you will get a response.
Oh, man, this is going to be a disaster. Week 15, Sunday Night Football in Jacksonville. Oh, no.
I thought we said that this doesn't matter.
Like,
apparently
we already knew this. We already knew you were going to play. Whatever. All right, anyway.
We already knew the Ravens were going to go to Jacksonville and lose. I just didn't know it was going to be on national TV in front of everybody.
You never know what's going to happen. Okay.
Ugh,
All right. Is that it? We good?
probably.
All right. So, cool. Got any shout-outs before we get out of here?
Shout out whoever. I don't know what the names of the groups were that catered today, but we had the faculty senior picnic at school during the school day. So I got a whole personal pizza to myself, and it was a pretty large personal pizza. It was like a medium-sized pizza. It was absolutely delicious, and I got a free scoop of ice cream, which was also delicious. So shout out to them and to our senior counselors who helped to organize that.
All right, Evan, what you got?
I guess shout out to Eric Walter, a classmate of mine at DeMatha who passed away last week in an avalanche up in Alaska. I was surprised to see that in the DeMatha Express this afternoon, and it's just been on my mind all day.
Yeah, sad news. I went to grade school with Eric Walter for a couple of years at St. Hugh's, and I also carpooled with him my freshman year to DeMatha. He's a good dude. On the wrestling team. Seemed to kind of keep to himself, didn't bother anybody. It's sad that he's gone. Okay, shout out for me is shout out to MTV, Music Television, which is going off the air after 36 years.
What?
Oh, really?
It's disappearing. And
So
No more 16 and pregnant? No more Super Sweet 16?
they didn't have any of that anyway. They just showed ridiculousness for like 75% of their time slots, and the rest of the time were like old movies. It was ridiculous. Like you could see it coming basically since the pandemic when they just put no effort into actually airing any new programming. Like I compared it to people working at MTV to working at AOL in its last days. Like you're just sitting around doing nothing because it's like, what's there to do? Nobody uses this anymore. So, but MTV was obviously culturally relevant for a long time, especially for people who are of the Generation X age, and even some of us millennials that watched a lot of MTV.
Video killed the radio star.
Yeah, whether it was music videos, whether it was Beavis and Butthead, or Celebrity Deathmatch, or Daria, or Pimp My Ride, which got its own featured ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain that Evan and I both ride, and it sucked.
Oh, jeez.
So
I didn't think it sucked.
It wasn't very good.
I wasn't in a hurry to ride it again.
That we did not ride it again. So there you go.
Well, we didn't even ride it together because you just disappeared.
You guys were behind. It wasn't my fault.
Did they put a roller coaster in the roller coaster so you could ride while you ride?
Not exactly, but similar. There's a dynamic there that sort of reflects that, but I'll talk to you about that a little later.
If that's the case, that's the ride may suck, but at least it's creative.
They tried something. I'll give them that. All right,
it was supposed to open in 2019, and it opened on New Year's Eve 2019.
So
they hit their deadline. They did their job.
Not really. They should have opened in May, but they're like, yeah, whatever.
They said 2019.
They did not say May 2019. They said 2019.
Well, I think they initially said spring, and then summer, and then.
Well, they were technically correct, which is the best kind of correct.
It is,
I guess. And then the pandemic showed up.
Yeah. So shout out MTV. You obviously won't be missed because nobody was watching, but
No.
I liked you at one point when I was a teenager and a young adult. So congratulations on your demise.
I'm gonna watch just as much MTV as I have in my life after they go away, which is obviously zero.
I used to watch some. I'd go downstairs and sometimes. So I was homeschooled before high school, and if I had like the afternoon where like my mom taught me in the morning and then she was teaching my sibling in the afternoon, and I had my homework in the afternoon, I'd go downstairs, and while I was doing my homework, I'd watch MTV.
Watch TV.
Yeah, I'd put on MTV while I was doing my homework. I wasn't supposed to have TV on.
Do you have homework when it's
But I got my
when you're
homework
homeschooling?
done, so my mom can't be mad at me even now. and my
Can you
mom
have homework
will
when you're
probably hear
homeschooling?
that because she actually listens to us.
Yeah, I watched MTV a lot, particularly in 7th and 8th grade when after school I would, quote unquote, I was supposed to go to the library after school, the Greenbelt Library, which is right up the road. And naturally I never did that. I went to the Greenbelt Rec Center and they had a TV in the game room, and I would just flip over to MTV and watch whatever nonsense was on there from basically 3 to 5 while I played foosball, and that was a good time. So, not gonna miss it because I haven't watched it in a long time, and apparently neither has anybody else. So, but that's MTV, and that is our show. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can reach us at thesportsballers@gmail.com if you have mailbag questions that you would like us to answer on the show, or any general feedback, whether it's comments, concerns, gripes, anxieties, whatever. We'll do our best. We're not really qualified for that kind of thing, but we'll take whatever you got. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, and if you have a particular podcatcher that we are not on, let us know and we will do our best to accommodate you. And you can follow us on Twitter at SportsBallers18. You can follow us individually. Corey is at Corey Puffett. I am at Quagmire67. And Evan is at Evan_Ash13. Evan will be running the show next week. I'm assuming that we will have more basketball to discuss. I don't imagine a whole lot of football will be discussed, but we'll probably make something up for that. And, of course, baseball will be in full go. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next week.